Something, ma'am.
Urgent, come here.
Nice big smiles, guys.
Standing in front of the gates for Strawberry Fields. These are replicas. The real gates are on display down the path.
I know you be coming
go there.
I wonder where
Very
you
busy right here now. So I'm going to go over to Paul and see what Paul's got. What's Paul saying right now?
Guys, these are not the original gates. The original gates are in the garden.
Right.
In around
guys here now.
In 2000, the gates were stolen, and it's all over the news about the gates being stolen.
Yeah.
So the next day, a guy phones up and says, "Your gates, I found the gates in my scrapyard, and they were scrapped for £140. £140.
Wow.
He said, "You can have the gates back, but I want my £140 back."
I want my what?
£140.
Ah.
So they got the gates, they put them on the back of a truck and paraded them around the city, put them in the museum, and when they opened the centre up in 2019, they're in the in the gardens at the back. That's the original thing. These are replicas.
And this is what...
That's the gates there.
So hold it. Well, we can't really,
Not
can
really,
we?
no.
Got a lot of people here, but you can see the building is no longer in the back.
That's what that building is now. That's sitting on.
The building, the original Strawberry Fields orphanage was torn down after a fire, and with that, they built a visitor center that just opened up in 2019. We'll be going there in a moment. And here you see the photo.
Yeah, we have the bathroom
And you can see there's no building in the back like there is in here. Here's the old Strawberry Fields building, the orphanage where John Lennon used to go as a kid and loved it there. And he ended up moving into the Dakota building, which looks very similar to the old orphanage. And he was riding by with Yoko Ono when he saw that building. He said, "Stop." And then they inquired about an apartment, and the rest is history. Nice walkway here leading into Strawberry. Nice walkway here leading into Strawberry Field as we come up. Got our taxi driver with Sue and John in front of me. And this is a new visitor center museum that just opened up in 2019, I believe he said. So we're going to go through here apparently.
Okay. This guy here is a big deal. This is John Lennon's half-sister.
Half-sister?
Julian Baird.
Let's say what now?
Julian Baird.
Julian?
Yeah.
Oh, pleased to meet you.
Hi.
Mike Chipperini. Susan Lucio.
John Whitney.
Yeah.
I'm Paul. Nice to meet you.
So she is the honorary president of the museum. And we're going to walk down here. A lot of nice little things here we'll look at here in a moment. Hey, there's Paul.
Let's go to the left, guys.
Going to the left.
Going down the stairs. That's the stairs. Yeah, nice little treat there. Nice to meet John Johnson.
So, point of reference, the wall John used to hop over would be where?
Further down here. That's where all the new houses are built. So this was we bought a lot of land,
right,
between 8 and 9 acres of land.
So the wall John would hop over is further down there, and you can barely see through the trees his homes because some of the land from the orphanage was sold off. Private residents were built on them. So that's where the wall was, over there by Menlove Ave. You can see some of the rooftops above the new homes. So here in Strawberry Fields, they built this bandstand. I'll show you what it looks like stepping further back. But this Imagine medallion is basically a bit larger, but a replica of the one you see in Central Park in New York City. And you can see that's a famous photo right there this painting of the young kid in front of the Strawberry Field Orphanage. And you can see the band playing, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band playing in front of the orphanage building, which is now gone. And then of course we have a photo opportunity right here. Here in this mural, you see John Lennon as a young boy with his school uniform on, smiling, looking upon the scene here. But even inside the mural, you can see the 4 Beatles seated at the table with George Martin and I believe Brian Epstein. And then look at here, Yoko Ono, Sean Lennon, Elton John, Julian Lennon and Cynthia.
Julian Baird, I just met.
And we just met her a moment ago, the stepsister of John Lennon. And then also we have numerous other faces in here, some you'll recognize.
George Michael.
Okay, so we have George Michael up and back.
Brian May.
From Queen. Freddie Mercury from Queen.
The 2 brothers from
Oasis.
Oasis.
From Oasis. The Gallagher brothers, Liam and Noel.
David Bowie.
David Bowie standing tall.
Brian Epstein.
Right. Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan, yeah.
Wow.
And there's that number 9.
Now, who do we have as, oh yeah.
These are just children.
We've talked about this. The number 9 figures prominently in John Lennon's life, and here he is sporting it on his shirt or his jacket. And who do we have as the
These
children?
These are just the orphans that are in.
Okay, so the kids that represent the orphans from the orphanage. And then as you can see, forever. Wow, I would never notice all that. Well, thank God for Paul, our tour guide. There you go. So that's the bandstand. You can see it's in a big drum kit from Sgt. Pepper's. Then you see these quotes from the song, "No one I think is in my tree." I mean, it must be high or low. Very pretty grounds here. So looking through this looking glass with the image on it, you can see how the Strawberry Fields Orphanage sat by aligning the steps with the existing steps that are here. So this is basically what it looked like right here with the big orphanage. And as you can see, as we discussed earlier, the roof line is almost exactly like the roof line of the Dakota building where John would make his home until he passed away in New York City. Take 3.
These are the gates from the Strawberry Mansion, the original gates that were stolen in 2000. And then they got recovered them from a scrapyard. And the guys that stole them sold them for £140 scrap.
And then
it was all over the news and the newspapers about these gates being stolen. The next day a guy phones up and says, "I think I've got the Strawberry gates in my scrapyard." So they got the gates back, paraded them around on the back of a truck, and then put them in the museum. And then when they opened this centre up in 2019, they put them in the gardens.
So what was the purpose of parading them around in the city?
To say that we've got them back because they were stolen.
Okay.
These are icons. These guys that stole them didn't know what they were taking.
Right, right.
Because there was only the gates.
I wasn't sure if they had a donation truck there.
No, I don't know.
Or something like that.
Some weight in these.
Yeah, right.
But they had the original gates.
So here's the Strawberry Field original gates.
Little strawberries on the tip. Yeah. And you think about these gates, they weren't put together like, welding metal together. These were built like Titanic with rivets. You'll see the rivets here. Right, yeah. See the rivets there? Up there you can put metal together.
Paul's talking about how it's a very well-built gate. Very sturdy, built to last, with these huge rivets that keep it all together. So yeah, these are the original gates that were recovered. Pretty cool, huh?
Them gates
pretty
are
cool.
150, 200 years old.
And they're very iconic here in Liverpool. Hence, that's the reason why they were paraded around the city once they were recovered. That's pretty awesome.
Little strawberries on the tips.
So there's the strawberries up here, right here. That's pretty cool.
Not yet. We don't know where to go. Close to where.
I think what they're trying to do is make this place like a quiet retreat in a way. Everybody knows who made this famous, and I think they're trying to create this semblance, which they succeed in, of quietness and peacefulness, just to walk through the gardens, enjoy what you see, and it's just a nice setting in the center of all the busyness of Liverpool, where nothing is real.
It's not bad. No. I've tried it.
That makes me think of the county fairs in the town of Wellington, and they sell a lot.
Gets the name for the band, the Quarrymen.
Okay, so we just pulled up to St. Peter's Church in Woolton, and this is basically where John was first introduced to Paul McCartney, and it's also the location of where Paul McCartney was invited to join the band. And I believe he made the decision then. We'll find out from Paul in a minute. He probably knows more about this than I do. Okay, Paul.
Right, this guy in the middle here, his name is Ivan Vaughan, also played in the Quarrymen. But his mum didn't like John Lennon, because John Lennon was always being naughty and getting into trouble. So his mum said, Ivan, you're going to a different school. So Ivan goes to a different school and he meets this guy, Paul McCartney. Got the same birthday. So Ivan says to Paul, I know a great guy who plays the guitar and sings, and his name's John Lennon. He said, come meet me here in 1957, Saturday. And he said, I'll introduce you to John Lennon. But Paul already knows George Harrison. They met each other on the bus. So this is what it was, the Quarrymen. This is the leaflet that came out. You know, 6th of July 1957. Now, John was in a band called the Quarrymen, and the guy in the church, the director of the church, says, John, we're going to have this festival so we can introduce young people into the church. And you've got a band? He said, yeah, I've got a band called the Quarrymen. So we said, we're going to go around on the back of these trucks, like this, like that. There's the Quarrymen on the back of the truck. There's no health and safety in them days, but this truck takes off quick. That guy's off the back. That's John with the check shirt on. Now, Ivan meets Paul here, because the Quarrymen are now playing in the backfield. There's a picture of them there, in the backfield. John's got no glasses on, because he doesn't like to be filmed with his glasses on. So Paul's walking to the backfield, and he can hear John's guitar playing. And he said, that guitar is out of tune. So when they get to the backfield, there's a picture of close up of John. When they get to the backfield, Ivan says, look Paul, it's too busy here. He said, meet me in this church hall tonight, because the Quarrymen are playing again tonight. He said, I'll definitely introduce you to John. This is the night they meet. No one took a photograph, so an artist done a painting of what it looked like. Now, the Quarrymen are playing on the stage, and they came down. This is Paul, and this is Ivan, and that's John. Now, as they're talking, John puts his guitar down, and Paul picks the guitar up, and John said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to show you how to tune a guitar in. Dead cocky, Paul. Very cocky. So Paul shows off, takes his guitar off, starts playing it, and John starts laughing. He went, you're tuning my guitar in, your guitar's upside down. So Paul shows off, gets on the piano, because his father showed him how to play the piano, and he starts singing Bebop Balooba by Little Richie. So one of them talks into John's ear and said, John, when you get him in the band, this kid's good. He said, he's a bit young, he's only 15. I mean, John's 17, but it's 2 years different, but 2 years in a teenage year, it means a lot. Yeah. So they all go home, and they can't stop talking about this kid, Paul. So 2 weeks later, one of the band members meets Paul in the village and says to Paul, we want you in the band. Now Paul says, normally I have to think about things, think it over, but he thought to himself, if I don't take this opportunity now, they may not ask me again. So Paul says, yeah, I'll join the band. So he's in the Quarrymen now. One night, John and Paul were on the bus, and Paul says to John, I know a great guy who plays the guitar. He's better than me, I think he's a little bit better than me. And he went, who? He said, George. Now George was at the front of the bus. And he said, George, George stands up, what? To come play a guitar in front of John. So he plays the guitar in front of John. John said, the kid is good, isn't he? So you got 3 band members of the Beatles now. It went from the Quarrymen to the Silver Beatles to the Beatles. Now, John was playing around with the name Beatles in the back of the van. This is another story. That he takes an E out the Beatle and puts an A in it, so it's Beatle. Now the Beatles were supposed to go into a cinema to watch a movie called The Wild One. Now Marlon Brando, his gang was called the Beatle Mob, so you put little stories together. Plus a lot of bands in them days with like Holly and the Crickets, you know, so
right.
where they got the name from, it's them 3 choices, whatever.
I think it's more Buddy Holly and the Crickets, because I think he wanted it to be John Lennon and the Beatles, or Johnny and the Silver Beatles.
That's the one.
So, and the reason why I think that he changed the A is he was big time into Lewis Carroll, and a lot of Lewis Carroll's wordplay, especially poems like Jabberwocky and things like that, Alice in Wonderland. And he loved all that wordplay, and to take a word that sounded like a cricket or an insect like Beatles, but to turn it into something that was more rock and roll like the Beatles is something John Lennon would do due to his Lewis Carroll influence. How's that?
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And I want to say something while I'm here, a little education. If you want to see Lewis Carroll's influence, then when you look at a song like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, where newspaper taxis appear on the shore waiting to take you away, that's directly out of Lewis Carroll's books. Also, The Walrus and the Carpenter is a poem by Lewis Carroll, and John Lennon said he didn't realize that the carpenter was actually the good guy in that poem of The Walrus and the Carpenter. But then again, the song wouldn't be good by saying by saying I am the carpenter. It sounds a lot better saying I am the walrus. So that's a good poem about 2 guys eating oysters.
The guy called Father Mackenzie.
Yes.
Now the real father was called Father McCartney. Now John says you can't call him Father McCartney because everyone will think that's your pops or your dad's. So they changed it to this guy, John Mackenzie. Father Mackenzie.
But is that a fact that he used that grave? Because there is another grave I noticed him back already. There's a Mackenzie back there.
Well, this is where they reckon the name because this was a little shortcut for the guys to cut through this cemetery to get to.
So what he's saying is this was a shortcut. If you didn't pick up on that the guys cut through here all the time. So.
But the one we want to see is Eleanor Rigby. Now if you go 1, 2, 3 graves in, you see the grave John Rigby, and you go halfway down, also Eleanor Rigby.
That's right. Now, I'm going to throw in a different tidbit.
Go on.
My understanding is Paul McCartney knew nothing about that grave, that he took the name Eleanor because when they filmed the movie Hard Day's Night, one of the lead characters, the girl's name was Eleanor Braun. Yeah. And he really liked that first name. And then there was a business downtown, some type of textile or banking industry or something called Rigby. And he really liked that name. He liked the way the 2 matched up. And when he was told about this, he was like, geez, I never knew that. But you never know, maybe it was subconsciously.
There's another twist to it, Daddy. Yeah. What he's doing is protecting the grave. Because he said it was just a name that came out the back of his head. Yeah. Because he doesn't want this grave getting defaced in any way. So he's protecting. If he said he got that name from that grave, that would get destroyed and someone would write all over it or do something to it. Because in the song he says, Eleanor Rigby is buried with her name. That is her maiden name. Below is the husband, Thomas Woods.
And you know what's wild about that? Paul McCartney's protecting this grave, and Paul has let the cat out of the bag.
Thanks.
Good job.
And
good job, Paul.
And Paul's seen all these widows standing by the grave, all the lonely people. And where do all these lonely people come from?
Right.
That makes sense.
And Paul says, I see all the lonely people. When they're all together.
Yeah, amazing.
So if you want to look, John Lennon's Uncle George is great. Uncle George is buried in this cemetery. Yeah, she moved down south. But John, she went down here. But she was only a young lady, so she's probably met someone else and buried.
And his mother?
Mother buried in Springwood Avenue Cemetery in Liverpool.
So the boys hung out here.
Yeah.
How close is John Lennon's house to here?
Well, this field would go all the way back. Because they sold some of the land off the church to build a school. But there's a school. That's where the quarrymen would have been playing, where them privets are at the bottom of here.
What, those bushes
Yeah,
back
the bushes,
there?
that's where the quarrymen were playing at that day.
So the quarrymen were playing back here that day.
57.
And John Lennon's house is back over there somewhere, correct?
Yeah, so they'd be taking a shortcut.
Where is Strawberry Fields relative to here?
That way. But that
So
direction.
Strawberry Field is over there,
Yes, and there's a house there.
and
so
John Lennon would.
Yeah.
So it's all within walking distance.
walking distance, yeah. Just that I had to come all the way around driving.
Right, right.
Like any
So,
boy.
so I was asking that because when we're driving here, it seems like it's further, but if you're walking, especially with kids, we all had shortcuts, and they would just go boom, 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 and they'd be places that they wanted to be fairly quick, much quicker than if you're driving, in fact, by walking. And this back way, these bushes weren't there at the time, back in 1957, 58, when the quarrymen were playing back here. Was it 1957?
57.
And those bushes weren't here, so the stage was set up in the corner facing outward. Right, all these graves are new since back then,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, these are no new ones.
Yeah. So a lot of these graves were not there then either. You can see the dates on them, 80s, 70s, fit 96, 96. So these are all new graves since John Lennon and the quarrymen played back here.
Now this is the grave of George Toogood Smith. This is John's uncle. To me, this is his real father.
Right. So here you go. This is John Lennon's, basically his stepdad, or self-proclaimed kind of adopted dad, that was dating his Aunt Mimi, and this is where he is buried. He passed away at 52 years in 1950, I think it says 55. And you got to imagine that all the death that John Lennon actually experienced during that time period between his mother Julia and then his uncle George and then Stuart Sutcliffe only a couple years later. So it's a lot of pain for John during that time. Okay, so here I was thinking that we had a hall in the church, but actually it's across the street where we're gonna go to the hall and see where Paul McCartney was basically introduced to the band and showed off his musical expertise, so to speak. So we're going in here now. Okay, so here's a plaque commemorating when John and Paul first met on the 6th of July in 1957. And it says the Quarrymen featuring the band members. I can't really read it, unfortunately. Yeah. In the evening, yeah, it talks about how in the evening before their performance, Ivan Vaughn introduced Paul McCartney and John Lennon. John recalled that was the day that I met Paul, that it started moving.
I mean, because I got 4 litter boxes.
So unfortunately the hall is locked. It's not always open. I would love to go in there and go to the corner of that hall and see where they were introduced, along where John played some guitar. I mean, Paul played guitar for John, tuned his guitar along with played piano. That's the scene right there where things started moving. Here we see the St. Peter's Church with the cemetery where Eleanor Rigby is buried. And then over here we have the Simon Peter Center with the building with the hall and back. And this is all within walking distance of John Lennon's home. So one thing you notice about Liverpool is that no matter where you go, there are Beatles references. So here we are just driving down this street here, heading back to the area where the Cavern Club is. And here's a little mural of some sort, and who features prominently in it is the Beatles. And there's other band members and of different bands here, but the Beatles are the prominent in the middle. And my point to this is the impact, the unbelievable impact, culturally and financially, that the Beatles have made on Liverpool and continues to this day. So we just stopped at what is called the Bombed Out Church. And this is a church that is a victim of the Blitz during World War II. When the bombers, what was it that they, was it bombers or V2 rockets?
I think it's V2 rockets,
Yeah.
bombers, and bombers.
But it, quite likely bombers, German bombers would come all the way up here, maybe V2 rockets, I'm not sure on that fact, and bombed out this church. And instead of rebuilding the church, the city of Liverpool kept it as a memorial to the war. But also really cool here is this statue, a little Beatles thing all together now, and it marks a Christmas truce of December 14 during World War I, where a German soldier is shaking hands with a British soldier because they're going to play soccer during the Christmas truce during World War I. That is pretty cool. This here statue in front of the bombed out church, where the belfry is still intact, but the rest of the church from the incendiary bombs was burned out and never rebuilt. And of course, all together now, I don't know if it's because of the Beatles, but that is the name of a song written by the Beatles. And you can see the poppies, which is a big icon of World War I veterans. You can see the Poppy Garden project. Pretty cool again. Beatles Fab 4 tour, taxi tour, tour guide Paul brought us by here on the way to dropping us off. Thanks again. Hey,
No problem.
by the way, I want to say this. I want to just say we really had a great time in the store.
great.
Paul T is our tour guide for the day. He gave us our card. I'll see if I can put the information and the details of this video. But he's been a great tour guide. All the best to all and happy adventures.